People always told me that you won't understand the true value of time until you hit high school. Now, it wasn't until about a month into my 9th grade year that when I was up sometime past midnight, miserable, sleep-deprived, and wishing for the gift of summer, that I realized they might have been right. I was starting to notice an alarming trend take shape. Those late-night workathons were starting to become more of a habit, and they were showing no signs of stopping anytime soon. And to top it all off, instead of being told that my situation would eventually pan out, I was told constantly that things were only going to get worse from here. But what got me to this point? That very question plagued me for hours on end, both back then and as recently as a few months ago. And it was this very question that created a curiosity and desire within me to seek out some answers. I wanted to know why we felt like we didn't have time. And the first place I went looking for answers was, in fact, myself. I had to be honest with myself, I wasn't the best at time management. After the first few weeks of school, my schedule looked something like this: 5 clubs, no free blocks during the school day, and a host of after-school activities that ensured a late-night arrival at home, at which point I would begin my homework. And let's just say when I started on my homework, I wasn't the most efficient at completing it. After doing some research, I deduced that I was falling victim to 2 main and very broad forms of behavior: overworking and procrastination. And numerous studies have been conducted on the downsides of both of these activities, and it comes down to this: they can both harm your health. But when looking at solutions for these, we keep on getting told one thing: be better at time management. But how does one be better at time management? For starters, they can make a list. List making is used as the go-to time management strategy for many time management experts. And for some people, lists work great. For others, as highlighted by a 2012 article in the Harvard Business Review titled, "To-Do lists don't work," to-do lists have notable negatives. For starters, they give us a lot of choice, and studies have shown that having too much choice can actually lead to negative emotions. Another thing to-do lists do is they encourage us to complete and check off the least time-consuming acts first, which can lead to the unintended buildup of activities that require a lot of time and attention all at once. And finally, possibly the biggest argument against creating lists is the simple fact that life happens. Things get constantly added to our plates, and as a result, we may never fulfill the initial purpose of writing a list: completing it. So let's ditch the list for a second. Another commonly cited time management strategy is the distraction-free work followed by a small break strategy. And this is a strategy I myself employ on nights with a heavy homework load. And while I find that it works sometimes, what I also find is that distractions are simply a part of modern living. It's hard to eliminate distractions considering the device that you're working on also happens to be the same device with access to the world's largest database of information and entertainment. So, eliminating distractions requires an immense amount of self-control. So I determined that poor time management couldn't be the sole cause of my time deficit. I mean, there was so much uncertainty and subjectivity when it came to the matter. Everyone had their own strategies, everyone had their own opinions, and while some strategies work for some strategies work for others. So I found myself back where I started. But I wasn't. After seeing all these mixed results of zeroing in on just myself and my time management skills, I realized I needed to broaden my spectrum. After all, I wasn't the only person who made me. My friends, my family, my environment, they all shaped me into the person who I am. So maybe they had some say in creating this situation. So as a result, I shifted my focus for looking for some answers onto society. Whether you believe it or not, you are and have been conforming to society's expectations since day one. It is our innate human nature to want to be a part of something bigger, to make some sort of positive contribution. And while the idea of a functioning society seems very utopic, the reality paints a far less perfect picture. And a part of this imperfect picture is the idea of society-driven pressures. Now, the effect pressures have on not having enough time is a rather indirect one. It starts with pressures pushing us to do as much as we can, like signing up for 8 AP courses, spending a dangerous amount of time in the gym, or jam-packing our schedule to the point where we have zero breathing room. And once we're hooked into these activities, the pressure's on us to be good at them, which takes even more time, thus depleting our already bleak reserves. See, I wanted to find out why we succumbed to such pressures, even though we were fully aware of the negatives that they would bring for us. So pressure, it never comes from a singular source. Rather, it comes from a series of smaller sources. Think familial pressure, peer pressure, school pressure, pressure from people you look up to, pressure from the media. So the solution to not wanting to feel pressure seemed pretty simple. Just don't listen to anything anyone has to say. I mean, create a bubble where you just do your own thing. You won't fall victim to pressures, you'll do what you like to do, and thus ensure that you'll never feel pressed for time. Case closed. But the thing is, if you think about it, there's never been a time in our lives when we haven't been under some form of pressure. Pressure and expectations are so deeply entrenched in us that entirely removing them from our lives, starting, say, now, is not only extremely difficult, but it could actually stagnate our brain's performance. Studies, such as the one conducted in 2013 at UC Berkeley, back up this claim. In it, one of the researchers said, and I quote, "Some amounts of stress are good to push you just to the level of optimal alertness, behavioral, and cognitive performance." Now, I'm fairly certain that alertness and proper cognitive performance are pretty helpful when it comes to efficiently completing tasks on time. So not only are societal pressures everywhere, turns out they can actually help us to be better at time management. So I was beginning to understand that maybe societal pressures were a rather necessary evil on our journey to understanding the feeling of not having enough time. But while I was researching pressures, I went off on a rather strange tangent, leading me to the following question. What if the real cause of feeling like you don't have enough time, what if it wasn't society? What if it wasn't poor time management skills? What if it was time itself? Now bear with me here. What if 24 hours in a day are just not enough for us? Maybe we as humans have simply grown out of the 24-hour stage. And these seemingly random trains of thought eventually led me to create a little thought experiment. I called it the 25-hour experiment. It was essentially a survey that I sent out to 2 groups of people, students who go to my school and colleagues of my parents. Now, in the survey, I asked basic questions about people's stress levels, time management skills, and schedules on an average 24-hour day, followed up by questions posed about a hypothetical 25-hour day. Now, everything about the day stayed the same, except you just added another hour to the end. And first, in the survey, I wanted to gauge people's frustration with the current 24-hour system. So I posed 2 questions. How packed is your daily schedule? And do you feel hard-pressed for time on a daily basis? And the results look something like this. Over 93% of students reported having a very or somewhat packed schedule. And as for the adults, well, 98% of them said that they had very or somewhat packed days. And the responses to the next question as well also show a similar image of mass time deficits. So I moved on to the 25-hour day, and given the previous responses that I just received, I was expecting overwhelming approval for the idea of a 25-hour day. I posed a simple question to people. How would you feel about having an extra 25th hour in a day? And I was expecting, good things. Instead, I got this. It looks a little confusing, but basically, while 51% of students said that they would feel amazing with a 25-hour day, over 27% said that they would feel indifferent, and that surprised me a little, just indifferent. Now, when asked to back up their responses, the students who responded with indifferent all had one unifying message. A 25-hour day won't change anything. Now, when moving on to the responses from the adults, not only was that same message repeated, it seemed to dominate the minds of the adults. And the numbers back this up. Only 17% of adults said that they would feel amazing with a 25-hour day. That number skyrocketed to 42% for indifference and 7% for awful. Now, some of the interesting things that the adults said was that a 25-hour day would simply turn into a 24-hour day because society would demand more from us. Another interesting point that was made was that it's not about how much time you have, but about how you choose to manage that time, because time management is key. Now, if you all haven't noticed, society, time management, more time, these trigger words keep on appearing, and we don't exactly know what to do with them. It's like everyone is trying to formulate a universal solution to the problem of not having time, even though we haven't solved it in our own lives. And that's frankly where we stand on the issue of feeling like you don't have enough time. There is no formula, no universal be-all, end-all solution, which is why I propose we should stop looking for one. Find what works for you and share it with the people around you. When you share it with the people around you, hope that it works for them, don't expect it. Because the fact of the matter is, we all live drastically different lives. So to think that one person's system is a one-size-fits-all that can work with everyone else is simply unrealistic. Now, I set off on this journey trying to find out that perfect one-size-fits-all system, and it's safe to say I didn't find it. But I'm okay with that. I accept that not everything about time makes sense. I accept that maybe a perfect solution or a universal solution to the idea of not having enough time may not exist. I accept that maybe this is a problem that we as humans aren't supposed to collectively figure out. It's one that we're supposed to solve within. Thank you.